I'm going to propose a hypothesis and then a thought experiment to test it. First, we've got to start with a definition of entropy. Entropy is often interpreted as the degree of disorder or randomness in a system, the lack of order or predictability, and the gradual decline into disorder. Our planet is subject to entropy, but we do not notice it because of the tremendous input of energy from outside, from the sun. In the northern hemisphere, during the winter, when the sun's energy decreases, then entropy increases. Your body is also subject to entropy, but prior to age 50, you don't notice it because of inputs of energy from food and sunshine. So, put too simply, heat is the opposite of entropy, and cold is the result of entropy. Absolute zero is that temperature at which molecules do not bounce off of each other, and so that is ultimate entropy. No movement, total cold. Now, this hypothesis I'm going to talk about has two parts. The first is that your mental and emotional organization are subject to entropy. That's the hypothesis. And so, like other systems, they move away from entropy when they receive energy from outside. And like other systems, your emotional and mental life become warm and active when they have inputs from outside. And they become cold and inactive when they do not. So, the second part of this hypothesis is that the entire human race is subject to entropy. I mean, as an entity, the race. So when a group suffers from entropy, they move toward coldness, darkness, hatred, and domination. But when the group lets in outside energy, they move toward warmth, lightness, and celebration. The outside energy that decreases entropy, or when it is missing, increases entropy, that outside energy is a mystery. So in 25 words or less, the hypothesis that we're going to check out is that both personally, you as an individual, and as groups, we move toward darkness and hatred, or toward lightness and celebration, depending on whether we let in an outside energy source. And to me, that energy source is a mystery. So now, the experiment to test the hypothesis is a thought experiment. Some of that thought experiment is conducted by reviewing history. So this entire question that I have in front of us today and the hypothesis arose from my reading of Chernov's biography of Grant, Ulysses S. Grant. Starting in about chapter 32 is the description of the horror created by Southern whites against the freed blacks. I have difficulty continuing with the book at that point because it is simply too awful. So then it occurred to me, there's nothing intrinsically or inherently superior in Northerners versus Southerners, even then, certainly not now. And I remembered a fiction by Cornel West where he describes the debasing power of enslavement upon the enslaver. The difference between the genocidal, psychopathic horror found in Southerners in the 1870s and the willingness of Northerners to fight to free the enslaved is not some innate characteristic. The difference between Southerners and Northerners is the debasement of Southerners by themselves through the enslavement of other human beings. They did it to themselves, and that debasement is what made them such a horror. So here's another part of the thought experiment. Let's imagine that the universe, with a capital U, has a purpose, and that the purpose was to produce, after 14 billion years of galactic explosions and implosions and formation of planets and evolution of life forms, that purpose was to ultimately produce in itself an ability to look back at itself. And you then are an expression of anti-entropy as you look up into that 14 billion year history up in the sky. So now close your eyes and imagine that. Imagine a sentient being finally, after 14 billion years, able to look back through all that working and see it and get it. The thought experiment is to imagine that as long as you are being that intended sentience, looking with awe, either backward toward your unimaginable past or forward toward our unimaginable future, you are drawing in anti-entropy energy by that looking back or looking forward. But when you are looking down on your fellow beings, you are allowing entropy to bring cold and darkness. When you enslave another, when you dominate and control another, when you humiliate or diminish another, you invite entropy, coldness, and darkness, and stillness. But when you are the wind beneath another's wings, when you provide resources to enable and empower, you are providing that external energy that pushes back entropy. Okay, so we've started the thought experiment. You're entertaining the hypothesis. The hypothesis is that you individually, your mental and emotional being, are subject to entropy, which if you do not allow outside energy to come in, you turn to darkness, coldness, and genocide. If you do let it in, you become full of light and warmth and movement and celebration. So that's as far as I've got today, and I've used up 8 minutes, so we're going to quit there, and I'm going to pick it up tomorrow. I love you. Let me know if you're out there. God, somebody's out there, damn it. Somebody's watching 50 times.